In the dark, cold silence of Pittsburgh, 1887, a secret whispered through the alleys, one that was never meant to be heard. A millionaire's wife, beloved by society, vanishes without a trace. But this wasn't an accident, it was a carefully orchestrated disappearance, buried beneath layers of lies and deceit. And what you're about to discover could shake the very foundation of everything you thought you knew about power, control, and the hidden hands that manipulate us all. It was the year 1887 when Clara Mallory, the elegant wife of Pittsburgh's wealthiest industrialist, disappeared. Her absence, initially dismissed as another tragic accident, quickly became a mystery that would haunt the city for generations. But Clara's story wasn't just about a woman gone missing. It was the beginning of a chilling series of events that pointed to a much larger, darker conspiracy that would soon unfold in the corridors of power. The wealthy elite were not innocent bystanders in this tragedy. Clara's husband, Walter Mallory, was a man with connections to some of the most powerful figures in America at the time. Their marriage was an empire in itself, a union of fortune, influence, and secrecy. Clara wasn't just his wife. She was an asset, a symbol, and a pawn in a game that would be played out in shadows. The city's elite couldn't hide their surprise when they realized the disappearance wasn't an act of nature or an unfortunate accident. Clara had simply vanished from her own home, her personal belongings untouched, her life erased. The only thing left behind was an air of dread, a feeling that something deeply sinister was afoot. This wasn't a case of a runaway wife. This was an engineered disappearance, part of a deeper, more dangerous play for power. As we peel back the layers of this story, we'll reveal the disturbing truth. This was no ordinary disappearance. It was the start of a conspiracy, a force larger than one woman's life. The deep, unspoken truths of the elite, the psychological manipulation of an entire class of people, and the secret networks of control that still operate today, all of it tied to that fateful night in Pittsburgh. Before we dive deeper, think about this. What would it take to erase someone from existence? Someone with so much wealth, so much power. It's a question that will haunt you once you start looking too closely. Write unseen forces in the comments below if you're ready to go deeper into the mystery. The night Clara Mallory vanished, the city held its breath, but not for long. Within hours, whispers spread. Whispers that the millionaire's wife had fallen victim to a terrible fate. The authorities scrambled to find answers, but the deeper they dug, the more the truth seemed to slip through their fingers. At first, it seemed like an ordinary disappearance. A wealthy woman gone in the dead of night. Perhaps kidnapped, perhaps murdered. As the weeks passed, something far darker began to surface. Clara's disappearance wasn't just a mystery, it was a warning. The people who were supposed to be protecting her, law enforcement, the press, even her family, seemed either complicit or shockingly inept. The more they searched, the more they covered up. A powerful web of lies had been spun, and anyone who got too close to the truth seemed to vanish from the story altogether. The media, normally quick to report on every sordid detail of a wealthy family's drama, kept curiously silent. Police reports were full of gaps, and anyone who dared question the official narrative was quickly silenced. The Mallory family's influence spread far and wide. Both in Pittsburgh and beyond, Walter Mallory wasn't just a man of wealth, he was a man of secrets. His connections reached high into the political and corporate spheres. And just like the hidden forces at work behind the scenes, these connections were powerful enough to influence the outcome of any investigation. But there were others who began to take notice. A small group of journalists, outsiders, and curious citizens started to put the pieces together. They were quick to point out what was missing. Clara's sudden and unexplained disappearance, the hushed police investigation, the strange behavior of Walter Mallory. It wasn't just a woman gone missing. No, it was the beginning of something far more insidious. It was about control. Clara was a symbol, a tool, a piece in a much larger game. As time went on, the focus shifted. The investigation wasn't about Clara anymore. It became about power, manipulation, and the hidden control structures of society. Walter Mallory, grieving husband, had turned into a cold, calculating figure, and his wealth and influence shielded him from scrutiny. His wife's life wasn't worth more than the image he wanted to project to the world. By now, it should be clear. This wasn't just about a missing person. It was about erasing a woman's identity for something much bigger. But who stands to gain from something so sinister? Comment: the hidden hand. If you're starting to see the truth behind the veil of lies, this is just the beginning. As Clara Mallory's disappearance faded from the headlines, the truth became even more elusive. But there were those who refused to let the story die. Unbeknownst to the public, a network of powerful individuals was quietly working behind the scenes to bury the truth, one layer at a time. These weren't just business magnates or politicians. They were the puppet masters, pulling the strings that controlled the flow of information. Their influence was deep, their tactics ruthless. This network, hidden in plain sight, was the key to understanding Clara's vanishing. Walter Mallory wasn't just a wealthy industrialist. He was a part of this clandestine world, and his wife's disappearance was not an accident. It was a calculated move in a game of power that few could even fathom. To those in the know, Clara's disappearance wasn't just a tragedy. It was a message, a warning to anyone who dared to challenge the unspoken rules of the elite. True power players behind Pittsburgh's glittering facade were not the men in suits at board meetings or the ones behind the headlines. No, the real power lay in a shadowy network of bankers, aristocrats, and secret societies that controlled the very fabric of society. These men and women operated in the dark, far from public scrutiny, their names hidden behind layers of wealth and influence. Clara Mallory had been more than just the wife of a millionaire. She had become a threat to this system. Her disappearance was a lesson to anyone who sought to break the invisible chains of this hidden order. Walter Mallory, with his wealth and connections, was merely the front. The real architects of this plan were far more elusive, their motives more dangerous. What they feared most wasn't a woman's voice. It was the unveiling of their power. The fear that someone somewhere would connect the dots and expose the hidden hand that controlled everything. And so they moved quickly. They silenced the witnesses. They manipulated the media. They ensured that no one would ask the right questions, no one would dig too deep, and most importantly, no one would connect Clara's disappearance to the much larger conspiracy that was unfolding. But there were those who saw the cracks, who began to question the narrative, who realized that Clara was just a small piece in a much larger puzzle. A puzzle that, once solved, would expose the vast network of control that had been operating in the shadows for centuries. This wasn't just a story about a missing woman. This was the story of a world controlled by unseen forces, a world where the rules were rigged and the players were untouchable. And the deeper you dig, the darker the truths you uncover. Are you starting to understand the scale of the manipulation at play here? The truth is not as it seems. This network runs deeper than you could ever imagine. If you're beginning to grasp the true extent of the control type, power beneath, in the comments, let's continue to unravel the lies. As the investigation into Clara Mallory's disappearance began to lose steam, something far more disturbing became clear. Control over public perception was not just a matter of wealth. It was psychological. Those in power knew exactly how to manipulate the minds of the masses, how to plant ideas and shape beliefs. It wasn't just about hiding a woman's disappearance. It was about controlling the narrative, shaping reality itself. Clara's disappearance was a perfect example of how the elite used psychological tactics to manipulate public opinion. The media, which could have exposed the truth, instead became a tool for distraction. They focused on irrelevant details, sensationalized minor facts, and directed the public's attention away from the most important questions. The public, conditioned to trust authority and accept what they were told, didn't question the official narrative. They had been trained not to. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate psychological manipulation on a grand scale. The elites knew that if they controlled the media, they controlled the minds of the masses. They knew how to craft a narrative so powerful that it would overshadow the truth. And it worked. For months, the public accepted the idea that Clara Mallory's disappearance was just another tragic, unsolvable mystery. What they didn't realize was that the real mystery wasn't what happened to Clara. It was how the elites had managed to control the entire narrative surrounding her disappearance. The media was the perfect weapon, shaping the way people thought without them even realizing it. The elite didn't just own industries, they owned perception itself. They had learned how to create a reality where their actions went unquestioned, where their control over society was absolute. This was the true power they wielded. The ability to make the truth irrelevant, to make the public believe whatever they wanted them to believe. And the deeper the deception ran, the harder it was for anyone to see the truth. The masses were trapped in a psychological prison of their own making. They had been conditioned to ignore the obvious, to accept the lies, to believe that everything was as it seemed. Clara Mallory was just a small piece in this larger psychological game, but her disappearance revealed a truth that would forever change the way we view the world. The real battle isn't for power. It's for the minds of the people, and those who control perception control everything. This isn't just about wealth or influence. It's about mind control. Can you feel it? The power to shape reality, to manipulate perception. If you're beginning to see how deep this manipulation goes, comment mind control below. The deeper we go, the more dangerous the truths become. As we dive deeper into the mystery of Clara Mallory's disappearance, the truth becomes harder to ignore. There is more at stake than a single woman's life. The elites were not merely concerned with their wealth and influence. No, their true power lay in something far darker: the ability to control, manipulate, and suppress knowledge itself. Beneath the polished facade of society's upper echelons lies a hidden world. One where secrets are buried, where information is weaponized, and where the truth is the most dangerous commodity of all. Walter Mallory, despite his outward persona as a grieving husband, was part of a much larger machine, a network of influence that had its fingers deep in the affairs of both the city and the nation. The world that Clara Mallory had married into was one of wealth, but it was also one of secrecy. Secrecy that hid the true nature of the power they wielded. It was a power born not just of wealth, but of control over the most fundamental elements of society: media, politics, finance, and law. The disappearance of Clara was not an isolated incident. It was a calculated maneuver in a larger game, one that would leave a mark on the fabric of American society. The hidden world of the elites was one that relied on secrecy, and secrecy thrives only when the truth is locked away. To understand the disappearance of Clara Mallory, must first understand the lengths to which the elites would go to protect their interests and their secrets. The ruling class had long understood the importance of controlling knowledge. They understood that if the truth ever got out, if the masses ever discovered the full extent of their manipulation, they would lose their grip on power. It wasn't just about wealth, it was about keeping people in the dark. Clara's disappearance was only a small part of a much larger web that was designed to keep the truth hidden from the public. There were whispers among those who dared to look closer. Whispers that spoke of dark alliances and shadowy figures working behind the scenes to protect their secrets. But those whispers were quickly silenced, buried beneath layers of media distractions and political maneuvering. The truth had become a dangerous thing to possess. The deeper we look into the Mallory case, clearer it becomes that what we are really seeing is not just a tragedy. It's a symptom of a much larger, more insidious disease, the disease of secrecy and control. The elites knew that if they could control knowledge, they could control reality itself. And the disappearance of Clara Mallory was just one example of how far they were willing to go to protect that control. The question remains, what happens when the truth can no longer be hidden, when the chains of secrecy begin to unravel? This isn't just about missing people. It's about missing truths. Elites' secrets are being exposed piece by piece. If you're starting to understand the lengths they'll go to, type "hidden truths" in the comments. Stay with me as we reveal more about the power that lies beneath. The disappearance of Clara Mallory serves as a chilling reminder of the hidden forces that operate in the shadows of society. But to truly understand the scale of this manipulation, we must look beyond the surface, beyond the carefully constructed images of the rich and powerful. We must examine the deeper, more insidious ways in which those in control manipulate every aspect of our lives. From the economy to the media to the very systems that claim to protect us. The elites didn't just wield power through wealth. They wielded power through control. They understood that if you can control the flow of information, the thoughts of the masses, and the actions of governments, you can control everything. This was the true secret behind Clara Mallory's disappearance. Her life wasn't just taken to remove an obstacle, it was taken to maintain a fragile system of control. A system that relied on the public's ignorance, on their compliance, and on their inability to see the puppet strings that pulled their lives in different directions. To truly understand how power works in this world, we must look at the history of manipulation itself. From the dawn of civilization, the powerful have understood that those who control the narrative control the world. Whether through religion, politics, or economics, elites have always sought to shape the minds of the people to serve their own interests. And what better way to ensure that the people remain under control than to keep them distracted with lies, half-truths, fabricated stories? Walter Mallory, Clara's husband, was merely a pawn in a much larger game. A game in which his wife's life was just another piece to be sacrificed. The system that allowed Clara's disappearance to go unnoticed was one that had been in place for generations. It wasn't just about the disappearance of a woman. It was about ensuring that the elite remained unchallenged, unthreatened by those who might expose the truth. The system was designed to suppress any efforts to question the established order. Those who dared look too closely were labeled as troublemakers, conspiracists, or simply silenced. And so, the manipulation continued, unnoticed by the masses, who had been conditioned to trust the authorities, to believe the official narrative, and to accept the story that was fed to them. But the deeper we go into Clara's disappearance, the more we begin to see the cracks in the system. The power structures that once seemed invincible begin to crumble. The lies become harder to sustain. The truth, once hidden in darkness, starts to rise to the surface. The question now is, how far will the elites go to protect their power? And what happens when the truth is no longer something they can hide? The elite's power is built on manipulation, but the truth is starting to break through. Can you feel the power shifting? If you're ready to see the system for what it truly is, comment, "The cracks appear." This story isn't over yet. Stay with me because the real secrets are about to be revealed. As we dig deeper into the mystery of Clara Mallory's disappearance, the true nature of the system that allowed such a tragedy to unfold becomes undeniable. The story isn't just about a missing woman. It's about the institutionalized corruption that runs through the veins of society, rotting it from the inside out. The elites, those in power, built a system where the rules don't apply to them, where their wealth and influence act as an impenetrable shield against the consequences of their actions. And Clara Mallory was a casualty of this system, a woman whose life meant nothing in comparison to the preservation of power, control, and secrecy. This isn't just a case of a corrupt individual, it's a case of systemic corruption, where the structures that are supposed to protect society are used to protect the very people who exploit it. Walter Mallory was only one piece of this system, but his connections ran deep. Through banks, corporations, and the very fabric of the political establishment. The disappearance of his wife was just another example of how the powerful manipulate the system to serve their needs, no matter the cost. Clara Mallory's life wasn't worth the effort to investigate. Her disappearance wasn't an issue to be solved. It was a minor inconvenience that could be swept under the rug to preserve the order that the elite had carefully built. To understand the true scale of the corruption at play here, we must look at how it permeates every level of society. From the highest offices to the local police force, corruption thrives where the powerful can control the system. In the case of Clara's disappearance, it wasn't just Walter Mallory's influence that made the investigation falter. It was the collective power of a system that cared more about protecting the powerful than seeking the truth. The media, which should have been the watchdog of society, became complicit in the cover-up. The public, distracted by sensational headlines and superficial narratives, never questioned the official story. The police, too, failed in their duty, either because they were too intimidated by the Mallory family's wealth, or because they were part of the larger system that allowed such things to happen. Every institution, every authority, became a tool in the hands of those who sought to keep the truth buried. This wasn't an isolated case. It was a symptom of a much larger, far-reaching problem. And as the years went by, the system only became more entrenched. The elites continued to pull the strings, and the rest of society remained blind to the corruption that was consuming them. But with every secret uncovered, with every truth revealed, the foundations of this corrupt system begin to crack. And once those cracks start to appear, it becomes a matter of time before the entire structure collapses. Do you see it now? The system is rotten, built on corruption and manipulation. If you're beginning to realize how deep this goes, type the collapse in the comments. The truth is starting to surface, and it's going to change everything. Stay with me, because the end of this story is just the beginning of the revolution. Now that the cracks in the system have begun to show, the real agenda behind Clara Mallory's disappearance becomes undeniable. This wasn't simply about a wealthy man protecting his image. No, this was part of a far larger, darker strategy. One that involved the manipulation of public consciousness and the preservation of a system that placed the elites above the law. Clara was not just a pawn in Walter Mallory's game, it was a symbol. Her disappearance, orchestrated and controlled by those at the highest levels of power, served a far-reaching purpose. The elites, those who sit at the top of the financial, political, and societal food chain, understood something most of us have forgotten. Control isn't just about wealth. It's about influence and the ability to shape the reality of the masses. Clara Mallory, her life, her name, and even her disappearance were manipulated to serve an agenda that few could ever understand. The elite's control over society went far beyond their financial power. It extended to the very ideas, perceptions, and truths that shaped our world. And Clara, in her naivety, had become a target. Her existence, once so secure, now served as a tool in a larger game of control. By removing her, the elites sent a clear message: challenge the system, and you will be erased. This wasn't just a matter of silencing one woman. It was a signal to anyone who dared question the status quo. To expose this hidden agenda, we must step back and view the situation from a broader perspective. The disappearance of Clara Mallory is just one chapter in a much longer story. One that began with the birth of the system that allowed the elites to control everything. And just like Clara, anyone who questions that system is at risk. The agenda behind her disappearance wasn't about her specifically. It was about maintaining a fragile illusion of control. An illusion that can only survive as long as the people remain unaware of what is truly happening behind the scenes. The elite, those who have manipulated the masses for generations, know that knowledge is power, and knowledge that challenges the status quo is dangerous. By eliminating Clara, they eliminated a potential threat to their system. But the most insidious part of their plan was that they didn't need to directly attack anyone. They simply needed to create an environment where fear and doubt ruled, where people were conditioned to remain passive and trust in the structures that kept them controlled. And in the silence of Clara's disappearance, they succeeded. Can you see the agenda now? This wasn't about one woman. It was about control over everything. If you understand how deeply this agenda runs, type "system of fear" in the comments. We're getting closer to the truth, and the final pieces are about to fall into place. Stay with me as we continue to peel back the layers of the story behind Clara Mallory's disappearance. Begin to uncover something far more chilling than a missing person or a broken marriage. Clara's vanishing wasn't merely a personal tragedy. It was a profound demonstration of the power of erasure, a strategic move designed to remove not only a woman's life from history, but to also eliminate any trace of a threat to an established, invisible order. The elites who orchestrated her disappearance weren't just erasing Clara. They were sending a message. Erasure in their hands wasn't a random act. It was a tool of power, a method of control that had been used throughout history to shape narratives, rewrite truths, and maintain dominance over society. This isn't some abstract concept. It's a reality. The elites have long understood that, in order to control a population, you must control their perception of reality. If the people don't know what's happening, if they're never exposed to the true story, they remain passive. They remain in the dark, easily manipulated and controlled. And erasure, whether through violence, media manipulation, or suppression of information, has been one of their most potent tools. But it's not just about silencing voices or removing threats. It's about erasing all traces of a particular reality, erasing history, erasing the past, erasing the truth itself. The very concept of erasure is so much more than an act of elimination. It's about control of time, memory, and identity. When a person, an event, or an idea is erased, it's as if it never existed at all. The elites know that history is a powerful weapon. If the people know their true history, if they understand the forces that have shaped their world, they can begin to challenge the system. They can awaken to their true potential. But if history is erased, if their memories are wiped clean, the people remain passive, lost in a fog of confusion, unable to see the truth that lies before them. This is exactly what the elites have worked so hard to create. A world where erasure is the norm, where inconvenient truths are buried, and where only the narrative they choose to control is allowed to thrive. Clara Mallory's disappearance was the perfect example of this. In the blink of an eye, she was erased from history, not just from the public eye, but from the very fabric of society. Her life, once so carefully crafted by the wealthy and powerful, was wiped away, as though it had never existed at all. In the days, months, and years that followed, the Mallory family moved on. Walter Mallory, once a grieving husband, became an even more powerful figure in the city. His business empire grew, his wealth increased, and the story of Clara's disappearance was swallowed by the tides of time, just another forgotten casualty of a world built on lies. But that's the true genius of erasure. It doesn't just remove one person from the narrative. It removes the potential for change, erases the possibility of challenging the system. Because once something is erased, it can never be questioned. It can never be revisited. It is as if it never existed in the first place. The elites understood that by erasing Clara, they were not just silencing her. They were silencing any future attempt to challenge the established order. They were sending a clear message to anyone who dared to question the power dynamics at play. Your voice, your story, your very existence can be wiped away in an instant. This is not a power that can be fought easily. Those who seek to expose the truth, to bring hidden histories to light, will face the same fate as Clara, erasure. In the case of Clara Mallory, erasure was subtle at first. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't a violent disappearance, at least not in the physical sense. Instead, it was a slow, methodical process. The media, once filled with stories of her life and marriage, shifted focus. The investigations into her disappearance were quietly abandoned. The people who had once known her, the friends, the neighbors, colleagues, gradually began to forget. They were conditioned to accept the absence, to move on. But erasure is more than just a social phenomenon. It's psychological. Those who are erased are not only removed from the record, they are made to feel that they never mattered. They are forgotten, not just by society, but by themselves. The memory of Clara Mallory's life was carefully scrubbed from the collective consciousness, leaving behind only vague memories, rumors, and unanswered questions. And that, in itself, is the most insidious form of control. Erasure isn't just about making someone disappear. It's about making them irrelevant. It's about shaping the world in such a way that their absence is accepted as normal. It's about erasing their existence so completely that even the question of their existence becomes irrelevant. Clara's story didn't end with her disappearance. In fact, her erasure sparked something deeper, an awareness that this kind of power could be used against anyone. The more we begin to understand the tactics of the elites, the more we see the dangers of this kind of erasure. It's not just the story of Clara Mallory. It's the story of anyone who dares to challenge the system. Whether through public outcry, political dissent, or intellectual resistance, those who pose a threat to the elite's control over society will find themselves erased. They will be removed from history, their voices silenced, their actions forgotten. The elites understand that in order to maintain control, they must keep the masses ignorant of the truth. They must create a world where inconvenient truths are erased, where alternate narratives are suppressed, and where only the story they want to tell is allowed to be heard. But even in the darkness of erasure, there is hope. The more we dig, the more we uncover. The truth can't be completely erased, no matter how hard the elite tries. It may be buried, hidden, and suppressed, but it will always find its way to the surface. And when it does, the power of erasure will be broken. But only if we are willing to face the truth. Only if we are willing to confront the forces that have sought to erase us for so long. Clara Mallory's disappearance was not just a tragedy. It was a lesson in the power of erasure. And the more we learn about it, the more we understand how easily the system can strip away our identities, our voices, and our existence. The elites understand this power all too well. And so long as we remain blind to the process of erasure, we remain vulnerable. Vulnerable to the manipulation of our minds, vulnerable to the control of our realities. But the more we understand the game, the more we can begin to fight back. We must not allow ourselves to be erased. We must not let history be rewritten in the interests of those who would control it. The power of erasure is real, but so is the power of the truth. The power of erasure isn't just a history lesson. It's a present-day threat. If you see how the elites are raising us, one by one, comment, "We will not be erased," below. This is the point of no return. Let's continue exposing the truth, no matter how deep it goes. As we continue to peel back the layers of Clara Mallory's disappearance, unsettling truth becomes undeniable. What we are witnessing is not merely the loss of one individual, but a carefully crafted system that binds us all in ways most of us can't even begin to comprehend. This is not just a story about the corruption of the elites or their ability to manipulate reality. It is a story about how that manipulation has seeped into the very fabric of society, creating a system that controls us all. The disappearance of Clara Mallory was the perfect example of this system in action, an event so perfectly orchestrated that it exposed not just the power of the elites but the deep-seated mechanisms that allowed them to maintain their hold on society. The system, which operates in the shadows, weaves a complex web of influence, control, and suppression that keeps the masses in line, obedient, and unaware of the forces that shape their lives. For centuries, the elites have maintained their control through this system, relying on secrecy, manipulation, and psychological tactics to keep the population under their thumb. But what if this system is far older than we imagine? What if it's not just a product of modern power structures, but a deeply ingrained part of human history itself? When we begin to look at the forces that shape the world, we see that the system is built on principles that have been around for millennia. Principles of control, fear, and suppression. These principles have been refined and perfected over time, allowing the elites to maintain a stranglehold on the population while staying hidden in the shadows. At its core, this system relies on a few key mechanisms: the control of knowledge, the manipulation of perception, and the suppression of resistance. By controlling knowledge, those in power can ensure that the public is kept in the dark, unaware of the true forces at play. By manipulating perception, they can shape reality itself, creating a world where the masses believe in false narratives and accept their role in society without question. And by suppressing resistance, they ensure that any attempts to challenge the system are quickly silenced, either through coercion, intimidation, or erasure. But the real power of this system lies in its ability to perpetuate itself. The elites don't just control the people. They control the very structures that allow the system to function. They control the government, the media, the economy, and the institutions that are supposed to protect society. These institutions, rather than serving the public good, have become tools of the elite, used to maintain their dominance and ensure that their interests are protected. From the banks to the courts to the media, every aspect of society has been opted to serve the interests of those in power. This is the system that Clara Mallory found herself caught up in. System that was designed to protect the elite and suppress anyone who dared to challenge it. But what makes this system so insidious is that it doesn't operate in the open. It doesn't use force or violence to maintain control. It uses subtle manipulation, psychological tactics, the careful construction of a false reality. In Clara's case, her disappearance wasn't an act of brute force. It was an act of quiet control. The elites didn't need to publicly assassinate her or make a spectacle of her death. They simply erased her from history. They manipulated the narrative, controlled the media, and used their influence to ensure that her disappearance would never be properly investigated. The system didn't need to kill her physically. It killed her identity, her memory, and her potential for resistance. And in doing so, it sent a message to anyone who might dare to question the system: you can be erased too. This is the power of the system. A power that doesn't rely on brute force, but on the ability to control perception, to control knowledge, and to silence any opposition before it has a chance to grow. The system is a web of influence that spans across all sectors of society, creating an environment where resistance is nearly impossible. Every institution, every structure, every force that could potentially challenge the elite's control has been opted, subverted, and manipulated to ensure that the status quo is maintained. And as we look deeper into this system, we realize that it is not something that exists in isolation. It is something that operates globally. The system is not confined to one country, one city, or one group of elites. It is a system that spans borders, that connects the rich and powerful across nations and continents. The elites, working together in a covert, global network, ensure that their interests are protected no matter where they are in the world. They manipulate markets, control resources, and create conflicts. Wars, economic crises, political upheaval, all in the name of maintaining their control over society. And it is in the context of this global system that Clara Mallory's disappearance takes on even more significance. Her case was not an isolated incident. It was a small but telling example of the lengths to which the elites will go to maintain their hold on power. What makes this system so dangerous is that it is not immediately apparent to most people. It is hidden in plain sight, operating beneath the surface, out of view of the masses. Most people go about their daily lives, oblivious to the forces that shape their reality. They are distracted by entertainment, manipulated by the media, kept in the dark by institutions that are supposed to serve them. And yet, the system is there, pulling the strings, quietly shaping the world in ways most cannot even imagine. The key to understanding this system is recognizing that it operates through a combination of fear, distraction, and manipulation. The elites know that if they can keep the population fearful, distracted, and misinformed, they can maintain control. Fear is the most powerful tool in their arsenal. By keeping the masses afraid of external threats, whether it's crime, terrorism, or economic collapse, they can keep them from focusing on the true threat, the system that binds them. Distraction is equally important. The elites know that if they can keep people focused on trivial matters, whether it's the latest celebrity gossip, the newest technology, or the next political scandal, they can keep them from questioning the deeper issues at play. And manipulation, of course, is the ultimate tool. By controlling the flow of information, shaping public perception, creating false narratives, the elites can ensure that the truth remains hidden and that the masses remain passive. But this system is not invincible. It may be powerful, but it is not indestructible. The key to breaking the system lies in awareness. Once we understand the forces that are shaping our lives, once we recognize the patterns of control and manipulation, we can begin to break free. Clara Mallory's disappearance was not just a tragedy. It was a wake-up call. It was a glimpse into the larger system that controls us all. And the more we begin to see the truth, the more we begin to understand how the system operates, the more power we have to challenge it. But to do so, we must first recognize that the system is not something external to us. It is something we are all a part of. We are complicit in its existence, whether we like it or not. Every time we accept a false narrative, every time we allow ourselves to be distracted by trivial matters, every time we remain passive in the face of injustice, we are reinforcing the system. But the power to break free is within us. It starts with awareness. Once we see the system for what it is, once we begin to understand the forces at play, we can begin to take action. The first step is to stop being complicit. The second step is to challenge the narratives that have been fed to us. Third step is to begin to build a new world. One where knowledge, truth, and freedom are no longer controlled by the elites. The disappearance of Clara Mallory may have been a small moment in history, but it has the power to change the course of the future. Her story, and the story of those who have been erased by the system, can be the catalyst for a larger awakening. It's time to wake up. It's time to see the system for what it truly is. And it's time to break free. You've seen the system in action. You've seen how it manipulates, controls, and erases. But now it's time to act. If you're ready to wake up, to challenge the system, to stop being complicit, comment the awakening below. The system is not invincible, but only if we rise together. Stay tuned as we continue to uncover the hidden truths that will change everything.